makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Harriet Gromer Hicks, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the June 21st, 2026 issue of the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our first article is She Has a Naughty Sparkle in Her Eye. Maya Rudolph's Broadway debut features her playing a fictional Mary Todd Lincoln. Maya Rudolph loves jokes and that are so stupid they verge on brilliant. So it's high praise when Rudolph describes Oh Mary, the Broadway play she's starring in, as an unhinged Mary Todd Lincoln, as so dumb. The biggest compliment I can give sometimes in comedy is it's so dumb. Oh, it's stupid. It is so silly, Rudolph said during a video interview. It's the type of humor that I feel cozy in because it's so ridiculous. Oh Mary might be ideal theatrical vehicle for Rudolph's comic skill set. The wildly inaccurate play reimagines Mrs. Lincoln as a self-absorbed, hard-drinking, aspiring cabaret singer who dreams of stardom and feels suffocated by her uptight scold of a husband, Abraham Rudolph, a Saturday Night Live alumni and veteran of improv and sketch comedy, throws herself into the show deranged slapstick humor with physical hijinks and elastic facial expressions that sometimes land bigger laughs than the punchlines. She is at her core a stage beast, said Sam Pinkleton, the play's director. Of all that stuff, living in the moment, playing with the audience, listening and responding, it just lives in her bones. Rudolph is the 8th actor to play Mary. She is the latest in a line of swaggering comic performers, which started with the play's creator, Cole Escalo, and has continued with Betty Gilpin, Titus Burgess, Jinx Monsoon, Hannah Solo, Jane Krakowski, and John Cameron Mitchell. Rudolph joined the production in the late April after just 10 days of rehearsal and has extended her run in the role through July 5th. She has a naughty sparkle in her eye when she performs, said Escola, who won a Tony in 2025 for playing Mary and delivered a hilarious bit with Rudolph as they presented an award at this year's Tonys. There's this energy of rambunctious child keeping everyone awake at a sleepover, making her first Broadway appearance and in challenging role with little prep time was one of the scariest things Rudolph has done as a performer. I kept saying I feel like I was thrown into the NBA and I just started dribbling, she said. Everyone said this is process. It's really scary. It's really overwhelming, but you're going to be fine. And I thought, well, they're crazy, she added, throwing in an expletive. Though Rudolph still gets jitters before each show, the theater feels like home, she said. I love the smell of the stage and the sound and the light, she said. There's something so alive about it. It could go horribly wrong, so you get butterflies and you get the flop sweats and all of that. But you do it. Your adrenaline kicks in and you just do it. Backstage, after a recent matinee show, Rudolph was in her dressing room, a cozy vintage furniture dramatic floral Oh, a cozy space with dusty rose-colored walls, dainty vintage furniture, dramatic floral arrangements, and a pale pink mini fridge. The room was decorated for Escola by the actor Amy Sedaris and has remained almost untouched through the reigns of the subsequent Marys. A powder pink floral themed boudoir fit for the diva. Rudolph, who is 53, had changed out of her costume and was wearing a roomy button-down shirt and matching wide-leg pants that looked like an elegant pajama set. She hadn't bothered to take off her stage makeup. She was going back on for an evening performance in less than 3 hours, and she does her own makeup. You gotta do your own on Broadway, kid, she said. The audience had been lively that afternoon, more animated than your usual matinee crowd. There were some wonderful hollers and squeals of delight and some really hearty laughs, which is so fun, she said. The evening crowds are often rowdier. We had a really obnoxious guy the other night, she said. He was probably drunk. He was calling out, saying my names before me. I was like, honey, no, this is not Rocky Horror. Music and performing are in Rudolph's DNA. As a little girl growing up in Los Angeles, she used to perform musical numbers at home for her parents, the singer Minnie Riperton, and the songwriter and producer Richard Rudolph. Performing on Broadway has been a lifelong dream, she said, but her stage aspiration fell wayside as her TV and film comedy career took off. When Rudolph heard that Escola was leaving O'Mary and other actors would cycle into the play the lead, she was intrigued. The minute I saw that other great people were doing it, I was instantly jealous and thought, I wish they'd ask me, she said. The interest was extremely mutual. I heard she was interested and crossed my fingers and held my breath until it came true, Escola said. Rudolph knew the part wouldn't be easy, but wasn't quite prepared for how physically demanding playing Mary is. Last fall, when she went to see Krakowski in the play and went backstage to congratulate her, Krakowski, a stage veteran, told Rudolph, Maria's how hard it was to run around the stage in Mary's ridiculous large hoop skirt. Rudolph said she thought to herself, if she thinks it's hard, I'm screwed. Rudolph hired a trainer and started lifting weights to build the endurance required to deal with the skirt. She ran lines every night with her oldest daughter, Pearl. It took her a while to shake the feeling that she should model her performance on earlier Marys. My first thought, and I actually struggled with this quite a bit in rehearsal, was, how do I do what they did, she said. I remember saying, I can't find my voice. That's when I realized, oh, you're supposed to bring you into it. That's why you're here. The character cracked up for her while reading one of Mary's more reflective speeches. Delivering the lines, she realized that Mary drinks to excess and acts out because she feels caged and is never allowed to be herself. There's so much deep sadness in this character, and I love playing stuff for comedy, but what I find really compelling is how trapped she is, how stuck she feels, Rudolph said. At first, Rudolph worried that her occasionally serious take on the character wouldn't land. I wondered, do they think that I'm treating this like the Cherry Orchard or like, well, Maya's out there doing a Meryl Streep version of Oh Mary? But it's in the words of the play, she said. I was sort of waiting for someone to say, don't do that, but no one did. So I'm still doing it and sort of hoping that that's okay. Pinkerton said he expected Rudolph to be hilarious, but was surprised and thrilled when she brought out the character's melancholy side. Frankly, it would have been fine for her to come in and say, I'm going to tear this up with laughs. But her approach to this role was so rigorous and careful, he said. It was the most truthful and honest take on the character. It was almost shocking. Cheyenne Jackson, who plays Mary's flirtatious heartthrob acting coach, said he was struck by Rudolph's ability to stay grounded while flinging herself into the show's madcap chaos. She's very calm and very motherly. There's an ease and a grace about her, which is such a fun juxtaposition because when she gets on stage, she's an absolute menace, he said. She's fearless and she's unpredictable, he added. I never know what she's going to throw at me. Rudolph said her improv background came in handy because, especially during the early performances when she felt a little shaky, there are definitely moments of improv that for sure just simply like save my ass, she said. When she made her debut as Mary in April, she wasn't sure she even knew her lines. Exhilaration and adrenaline carried her through the show. At curtain call, she spotted her family in the audience. Her partner, the filmmaker Paul Thomas Anderson, and their children, and started jumping up and down. I went bananas, she said. It was so overwhelming. Like the Marys before her, Rudolph sticks to the script but puts her own spin on the delivery. At a performance last month, Rudolph blew onto the stage like a hurricane to roars of applause and whooping. She careened across the set, tossing her outstandishly bouncy curls, pouting and whining in a Valley Girl lilt. The shout of what? She demanded after Abraham, played by Philip James Brannon, told her they're at war with the South. She ping-ponged drunkenly around the Oval Office, occasionally addressing a portrait of George Washington as mother, and collapsing in an inherited heap on the floor, her enormous skirt upturned in a revel, a pair of heart-patterned bloomers. The audience howled and screamed during a scene in which Mary auditions for a play and improvises crude lines that most certainly do not appear in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Rudolph, standing in front of the stage curtain, delivered the melancholy monologue in an outstandingly exaggerated Cockney British accent. Krakowski said that when she saw Rudolph perform, she felt a twinge of jealousy at Rudolph's delivery when Mary butchers Shakespeare's sonnets with a ridiculously overblown stilted cadence. I was so pissed I hadn't thought of what that myself, Krakowski said, laughing. Maybe not pissed, but envious that I didn't make it as delicious as she did. Near the end of her run as Mary, Rudolph feels like she's finally getting the hang of it. As exhausting as it can be, 8 shows a week is pretty gnarly, she said. She's not eager for it to end. It's pretty special play and a ridiculously special opportunity, Rudolph said. Every single Mary has said, I don't want to leave. Our next article, Olivia Cooke's Happy Place is not like CBS. Olivia Cooke affects an icy calm as a calculating Alicent Hightower on HBO's Game of Thrones, prequel series House of Dragon, whose third season premieres on Sunday. But Cook 32 describes herself as ruthless, more empathetic. I hope I take other people's circumstances into account a bit more than she does, the actress said in a video call from her home in London. Cook, who also gained acclaim for portraying Cherry on Amazon Prime Video's psychological drama, Cherry on Amazon, The Girlfriend, has a full slate. She's next play woman whom Alden Ehrenreich's character meets an entrained in crime thriller, Switzerland, and then feminist foil to lusty vampires' matrimonial designs in the gothic horror thriller Brides. She shared 10 of her most have comfort items. These are edited excerpts. Number 1, my Kindle. The therapist recommends a lot of books, and it's so nice to have an apparatus where I can discreetly read these quiet, intense books and not scare people in the street. I just read The Safe Keep, which was very beautiful, and then The Director, which is an incredible book about a director in Nazi Germany. Number 2, chocolate digestive biscuits. There's something that's just so nostalgic and comforting about having a huge cup of tea, always with a side of biscuits. I have them every single day. I just went on holiday to Sicily and came back, and I'd lost loads of weight, even though I was like, wait, I actually ate so much on holiday, and it was because I wasn't having half a pack of digestive biscuits every single day. Number 3, Friday Night Genius. Since my partner, Ralph Davis, and I got together a little over 2 years ago, we've made it ritual that we take Friday night to decompress and chat about our week over a pint of Guinness at the pub around the corner. It's just a way to take a big, deep breath and let go of whatever we've been holding on to. Number 4, my fan. It's driving a wedge between me and Ralph because we both regulate our temperatures in very different ways. He's cold, I'm roasting, because UK houses are ill-equipped for hot weather. They're built to retain heat. Looking at the shark fan in front of me with love and adoration because it has allowed me to sleep. Number 5, my nephew Louis. When he was born at the tail end of 2020, it opened my eyes to how beautiful and pure and joyous having young children in the family can be. He's a complete boy. He's so energetic, so cheeky. Like now he's had his first year in school. All he does is roll his eyes and say, 6, 7, and bruh. Number 6, my Late Show with Stephen Colbert mug. I hate it when I go to a different country for work and I've been put in a hotel or an apartment and they just have teeny weeny coffee mugs. So I just bring my own massive one and wrap it in a bunch of t-shirts so it doesn't smash. My Stephen Colbert mug that I got from when I was on his show is one of my favorites. It's like a pacifier at this point. Number 7, European pharmacies. They have really nice Italian and French brands that we sometimes can get in the UK or that are really expensive here. And all the pharmacists in Europe are so helpful. They're just very tranquil places. It's not like going to CVS where it's like strip lightning. They're very chic for some reason. Number 8, L'Oreal Professional Metal Detox Hair Mask. My hair is very coarse, very dry, very curly, so I need to just shove as much moisture into it as possible. In the past, I've had chunks of hair falling out because how processed it has been. so I'm now very diligent about hair health. I like a thick mask, and this is the best one I've used. Number 9, the National Theater. I couldn't afford to see shows there when I was 17 and auditioning for drama schools in London, so I would just hang out at the understudy, which is the bar that's attached. I have such fond memories of meeting up with friends who were all on similar journey. As I got older and started watching the shows there, I was not disappointed. It was as magical as I thought it would be. Number 10, my mattress. It wasn't particularly expensive. It's been with me from living in New York to living all around London. I think my body is just molded to it. It's like the princess and the pea now. Maybe it's carcinogenic and it's going to give me an early death. But whatever, if I'm dead in the next 5 years, just admit that it's my mattress. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our next article, 40 Years of Summer Stage. In June 1986, Sun Ra, the eccentric experimental jazz band leader, set up in Central Park with his Omniverse Jet Set Orchestra, becoming the first performer in an ambitious but scrappy and most important free art series called Summer Stage, above Sun Ra's 1989 performance. In the 40 years since, Summer Stage has become one of the premier performing arts venues in New York, with a legacy of hundreds of top musicians, among them stars like David Byrne, Patti Smith, Sonny Rollins, and MIA, and history of presenting artists from around the world. It has also since expanded from its flagship venue in Manhattan to stages throughout the city and added paid benefit shows to subsidize the free ones. The series' 40th anniversary season opened on June 10th with the singer Ladishy, who looked forward to it as a special gig. New Yorkers are a listening audience, Ladishy said in an interview. They give and receive. The New York Times spoke to more than 20 artists, producers, and supporters about history of Summer Stage, its memorable gigs, and its significance to the city. These are edited excerpts from the conversation. Joe Killian, Summer Stage founder, my vision was let's bring these various communities of cities, Central Park. I believe New Yorkers are curious, inquisitive, intellectual, small. I don't know what that is. Every artist around the world wants to play Central Park, so I had a pitch that was good. I didn't tell them it was in a different place when they were Simon and Garfunkel played. Adrian Benepe, former Parks Commissioner. People forget that Central Park had 1,000 felonies a year those days. We understood that to make the park safe and to displace negative uses of public space, you had to fill the park with positive uses. Killian. In the first seasons, the shows were at 3 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday. The police would not allow anything there at night because they couldn't guarantee security. Yusuf Endor. I had toured with Peter Gabriel and always hoped that I would have another opportunity to play for audience in New York. Our Summer Stage concert was the fulfillment of that hope. It was a crucial doorway for our music, an opportunity to have it heard. Patti Smith, it was the first public performance I had done since '79, and I just didn't know what people would think. I really didn't know what my status was, and one point I just froze, and I looked over to my right, and there was my brother, Todd, and my husband, Fred, standing together. Toddy, who is the head of my crew in the '70s, my loyal knight, was spurring me on. And Fred, I could feel the empathy from him. The two of them were wordlessly sending me strength. I never dreamed that the two of them would be dead on a little more than a year. In my mind, I seemed to like there was a sea of people. Actually, it might have been a few thousand, but it just seemed like all the New York was there. The people were there for me, and what a great place to be welcomed back from Central Park. Thurston Moore, the idea of putting an experimental rock band with an experimental jazz group, that was really special. For me, it reflected what you would read about happening at the Grand Ballroom in Detroit in the '60s, where people like Pharoah Sanders and Archie Shepp would be playing on the same stage with the Stooges and the MC5. By the '90s, things had become so culturally factionalized, so to come together with a jazz group and a rock group, it's not entirely radical, but it was perfect pairing in a way. The breakout era. As Summer Stage evolved, it began to draw younger emerging artists whom producers often booked just as they were breaking through. In 2005, that meant MIA and Arcade Fire, who brought David Bowie on for a surprise encore in 2008. The new class included Vampire Weekend and Saint Gold. Win Butler from Arcade Fire, Bowie had come to our first big show in New York at the Bowery Ballroom. He felt some kinship, which we obviously felt ourselves. So I reached out to him when we were doing the show, and it turned out to be one of his last performances. There was this stickler stage manager. During sound check, he was telling us we were going over time. And then when Bowie came backstage and we were about to go on for the encore, the stage manager said, "I'm pulling the plug," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I lost my goddamn mind, and there was this big blow up. I remember looking over at Bowie, and he was just completely unflapped. We were super amped. The heart rate was like a million. We played Queen Bitch, one of my favorite Bowie songs, fast and punk. This was the funeral tour, and we were all in our black funeral clothes, and Bowie comes out wearing a white suit and white fedora, sort of like an angelic figure. It was very dramatic. Ezra Koenig from Vampire Weekend. That was the biggest show we'd ever played at the time. There was something about playing Summer Stage that felt like our first show was a real band with a real career. It felt like the culmination of all the work and all the things that had happened by that point. The album coming out, playing SNL. In a way, I think the Broadway Ballroom was kind of where I'd always hoped to play as a musician, and Summer Stage was probably a step beyond my wildest dreams. St. Gold. At that point in my career, I was still noticing who was coming in the shows. I had tried so hard not to get pigeonholed into like this is the black version of anything else, and just to allow my music and myself to exist outside of any of the boxes that people try to put you in. This was the beginning of the era of no genre, and the diversity of the Central Park crowd was really exciting to me. That was one of the main shows where I was like, oh wow, everybody's out there. Fine with the dark and the rain. For all the serendipity of Summer Stage, its open air location has added an element of unpredictability to shows over the years. David Byrne. I remember our Rio Mumo show in 1990 with Margaret Menzies as both opening act and background singer. During her set, it started to rain, and we watched as the canopy over the stage started to collect water in a huge negative bulge. As soon as Marguerite left, it burst and a massive weight of water came crashing down center stage. It was obvious I wasn't going to be able to do my own show, but it got rescheduled and everything had been fixed then. More, when we got there, you could see the dark sky in the distance creeping toward Manhattan. Sunray Orchestra played before us, and a quarter of the way through their set, the black sky separated and the sun started peeping through. Sunray was in a wheelchair at this point, not really speaking, and I remember kneeling next to him and looking at his orange beard. How cool is this guy, I said. Thank you for bringing the sun out. All he could do was smile. Koenig. I remember feeling a bit nervous, and there was a question whether the show was going to go on. But in the end, the rain made the show so much more memorable. We had a pretty party that night, which I'm pretty sure was at Santos Party House. And I remember feeling a little cold and wet standing in some air conditioning, but just thinking, this is perfect. Jared Castle Devo. The weather was erratic all day before Devo's performance in July 2004, but the rain held off. It started raining right as we finished our encore, and all hell broke loose when we got off stage. I remember having to walk to the Essex House where there were no provisions from the promoter for vehicles taking us off site. It was total chaos, and I just walked in that torrential rain to the Essex House. But once you give up, it was kind of fun in a way because it was warm rain. On August 14, 2003, the Indigo Girls had just completed a sound check when shortly after 4 p.m., the city lost power in a sweeping blackout. They went on with the show. Emily Saris of the Indigo Girls. It wasn't that far after 9/11 in our collective memories, and so when the power went out, there was a moment of what does this mean? Amy Ray of the Indigo Girls. The promoter was scrambling backstage, and we were like, is there a way we can play anyway? Everybody's already here. We have this much generator power, and we can play this long for a set. It just seemed like a moment to seize. And in the Summer Stage fashion, they were completely down for whatever, since we had only so much power. We'd sacrificed having a lot of lights to have more sound. We played for like 45 minutes, and the crowd was super enthusiastic and super fun. and then everybody filed out of the park quietly. I wrote a song about it, Fine with the Dark. Sailors, I'm writing a song about it now. Music of the world, music of the city. From the start, Summer Stage prioritized music from around the world, inviting African musicians like Lady Smith, Black Mambazo, and Baba Mal, as well as artists from Brazil and the Caribbean. By 1996, DJ Rekha, a New Yorker of Punjabi descent, was putting on regular dance nights. Noor, I was super excited coming on stage. It was a vibe. We were wearing our traditional stage outfits, including special boots made in Sangal and Fune, Teneged hats like on the cover of my album, and my grace. I think it was perhaps the concert where I really began to see that our music could be heard by a wider audience outside Africa. At the time, music from countries like ours had perhaps never before been showcased in just this way. Femi Kuti, of the crowd, if the crowd loves you, it's a big stepping stone to going to other states in America. And if you have a great concert, you'll be back there like me. Central Park, this was one of the performers that gave African music exposure. I've had a couple of instances where my musicians ran away into America. It happened on my last tour. I mean, are you going to run from Houston to New York's? It ended up being a great tour because I got an American bassist, an American saxophonist, American trumpeter, and an American percussionist. But I still never replaced those positions with Nigerian anymore. Byron, I saw lots of shows there, pop artists, Mexicans, Colombians, Peruvians, Brazilians. I come to realize that New York is truly an international city. And even if some of my friends hadn't heard of, say, Eliza Soares, the no-nonsense queen of Brazilian music, the local Brazilian community would get word and show up. The place would be packed. It was a great show, by the way. Bill Bargan, former Summer Stage artistic director. One of the key global moments for Summer Stage was in 1995 when Gilberto Gil headlined with Chico Science and his band Nicoa Zombie. When Gil called Chico on stage for a duet, it felt like he was anointing Chico and his Mangu beat scene as the successors to the Tropicalia movement. It transformed a regional cult band into national icons. Erica Elliott, Summer Stage Executive Artistic Director. I want to support artists and have people early in their career because it also makes them alumni, part of our story. When MIA came in 2005, we had her at this pinnacle moment in her career. DJ Rekha. When I first pitched MIA around December, people hadn't really heard her so much. In fact, I thought she was a little obscure, but by the summer, she just blew up. Salman Rashida and Padma Lakshmi came to the show and everyone was losing their mind. Padma Lakshmi. I've been seeing DJ Rekha play Baranje there several times. Rekha brings out a great facet of our community. It's nice to experience that music in daytime outdoor setting. It's one of the most beautiful resources to city fans. Noise complaints have been a hazard of summer stage since its beginning. Over the years, producers have committed to gradually reducing the venue's noise output but avoided calls to shut down the move. Heather Labov, Executive Director, City Parks Foundation. Our artists are never allowed to go beyond 95 decibels. With our new sound system in 2019, the sound complaints disappeared. More, we were warned that there were sound limitations which we were very resistant to. Volume is very elemental to what we do, so I started yelling into the microphone, Park Avenue, wake up, Benepi. We are a bit more than 100 yards from Fifth Avenue. It's amazing to me that the wealthiest people in the world who might have inconvenienced by the occasionally loud concerts did not prevail. John Batiste, the joy of music and the connection of gathering outdoors in song is one of the oldest traditions in humanity. In 2025, it felt like we were playing in an era defined by persecution and division globally. I wanted to present a show that spoke to the oneness of all people and our collective struggle. Graham Nash, playing outdoors to a lot of people was thrilling for us when we played in 2008 because we wanted to spread the word that Crosby, Stills, and Nash was a kind of music that would make you think and make you shake your ass at the same time. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our next article, House of Dragon Star sees the humanity in bad guys. Matt Smith showed his charm on Doctor Who, but his later roles have taken a darker run. London. On a May morning in the garden of his home here, Matt Smith played the perfect host, offering tea, switching chairs so that I could sit in the shade, apologizing every time he sprang up to tend to his dog, a terrier just returned from the vet. I've been prepared for the charm of Smith, a star of Doctor Who, and the crown, this easy seduction. The writer Stephen Moffat, who has known Smith for two decades, described his ability to work a room or garden as a borderline ridiculous. Everyone that Matt ever talks to thinks that they are probably Matt's best friend, he said. Now you just got Matt smothered. Even forewarned, the gallantry was irresistible, if a little surprising. After breaking out in 2010 as the 11th incarnation of Doctor on the beloved BBC Fantasia Doctor Who, a role that almost insane likably he was spent the intervening years playing murderers, misanthropes, and men in squirmy submission to PowerPoint wives. He has taken a blinding appeal, a white grin, that swish of brown hair, and applied it to the kind of men who might snip off a rival's lips with blunt scissors, as he did in the macabre thriller Lost River. Actually, the macabre thriller, quite good fun, Smith said of the scene. When he plays these men, Smith's big eyes narrow to slits, his natural warmth goes icy, and no tea is offered. And yet he makes you care for these baddies, to see them as wounded even as they wound. He has a way of playing the injury, of burrowing into the rawest parts of any role. Moffat again If he's a serial killer, you think he probably had a good reason. On House of Dragon, the Game of Thrones prequel that returns to HBO before its third season on Sunday, he plays Daemon Targaryen, a silver-haired prince who kills these ease and unconcerned, blood-spatter looks great on him. In Smith's hands, Damien is nearly sympathetic. Certainly Smith sympathizes with him. He feels for all the men he plays despite the terrible things they do. I do definitely fight their corner, he said. He noted one reasonable exception, Charles Manson, whom he portrayed in the 2018 film Charlie Says. We need our villains, Smith says, his eyes hidden by sunglasses, adding, it's not like I only want to play that for the rest of my life, but it is what he plays now for reasons he couldn't quite articulate. Before Smith was an actor, he was a teen soccer player with professional aspirations. When an injury ended all of that, he landed with some reluctance in a school production of 12 Angry Men. This was far from the field, but Smith found the intense preparation and the sense of risk and release not so different from gameplay. He remains drawn to precisely to what he called a sort of precipice. When you watch the Olympics and someone wins by the space of a fingernail, you're trying to recreate that feeling in drama, Smith said. The passion he once brought to soccer, he infused into performance, creating what infused into Kieran Gillen, his Doctor Who co-star, called absolutely relentless approach to acting, almost athletic. Duncan Macmillan, a playwright who has known Smith for decades, noted his distinct physicality. He can be very, very still, but you don't want to take your eyes off of him, Macmillan said, because he's got a kinetic energy to him. Smith soon joined the National Youth Theatre, a training ground for generations of English actors. He began working professionally while studying drama and creative writing at the University of East Anglia, appearing in a play at the Royal Court and another by Simon Stevens that transferred eventually into the National Theatre. A role the 2007 BBC drama Party Animals followed. A year or two after that, he was brought in for first of many auditions, the Doctor in the Doctor Who. Smith inherited the role from David Tennant, one of the franchise's most adored stars. He's had big-time jumping shoes to fill. He was significantly younger than any previous Doctor and less experienced, but Moffat, the show's writer, saw him as a natural fit, ageless character. There was something ancient in the eyes, Moffat said. I used to say that he looked like a young man built by old men from memory. Gillen noticed that quality in their first chemistry read. It was like meeting the coolest young guy and the oldest, weirdest alien, she said. Smith, who was just 26 when his casting was announced, felt overwhelmed by the role, but he held his nerve. Doctor Who, which can veer from comedy to drama to fantasy, was both a showcase and a finishing school, giving him a taste of nearly every genre. It also made him, at least in England, very famous and very loved. Days after his final season wrapped, he began dismantling his heroic reputation. His first post-Who project was musical adaptation of the American Psycho. He starred as Patrick Bateman, the titular Psycho. Definitely actively went I want to go and play bad guys, he said. He is not transformational actor. He has a face and an effect that don't alter easily, but he wanted to push his inherent likability to its limits. I've always been interested in the element of surprise, even to yourself, he said. His next major role was a young Prince Philip on the Crown Netflix's unmarket man Philip on the Crown Netflix's upmarket Montclair drama Philip Royal Consort to Queen Elizabeth II, and not perhaps a villain or a psycho, but he had a reputation in his later years as a bumbler, a racist. Still, Smith found him not so different from the Doctor or from Patrick Bateman. They're all sort of misunderstood outsiders, he said. This seems a stretch for Philip in particular, but sitting in the garden, haying been thoroughly smothered, I believe it. I also believed him when he said his attraction to these darker characters was artistic rather than specifically personal. Even as a personal is something Smith does not care to discuss. There's a kernel of something private, even somber, under the suave exterior, and there are elements of his work and would prefer to remain occult. It's important to keep those things secret, he said, when asked about the specific emotions he brings to Demon. The role, another anti-hero, and a very outsider, didn't immediately interest him. Once the presumed successor of his brother as King Damon is passed over by the favor of his niece Rhaenyra, whom he later marries, Smith had already been part of one huge fantasy franchise, and he wasn't seeking another. He also worried that Damon, who must submit to Rhaenyra, might seem too close to Philip, but he worries about his. But after meeting with the showrunner, Ryan Condal, and discussing the scale of the series, he agreed to screen test. He was attracted to what he called Damon's gift for poetry and destiny and fatalism and romance, and I suppose sort of psychopathic lust for violence. For Condell, the screen test was pro forma. He had Smith's picture up on writer's room of Damon Rent's inspiration. Condell also saw Philip's similarities, and in meeting with Smith, Condell felt that he could take his character, a violent dragon rider, in an incestuous marriage and make him relatable. He was charismatic and had this dark edge to him, but was also very vulnerable, Condell said. He can bring the quality that will keep you interested and invested even when he is ordering the killing of a child. In Damien, Smith felt that sense of risk that precipitates. Damien is a killing machine who sees himself as sane and loyal, a man of complete conviction. The job is to make people recognize all of these things, not just this slight version of him, but the bad guy, Smith said. He's selfish, he's violent, he's sadistic at times, but he's also a human being. Emma Darcy, who stars opposite him as Rihanna, was already a fan, having once waited all day unsuccessfully for American Psycho tickets. Even so, Darcy was struck by gravitas Smith brought to the role. The magnetism Damon seems to be custodian of an ancient knowledge. How Matt does that, I don't know, Darcy said. There is a kind of mystic part to our job. Matt has that in spades. Shooting a show of the scale of House of the Dragon isn't always easy. The days are long, and spending them in murderous headspace, doused in fake blood, can exact a toll. But this season, Smith pushed for the fighting to seem more realistic, shading the show's darkness even darker. If you've ever seen a proper fight, it's so quick, boom, and then someone can be really badly injured, he said. It's a mad thing. It is so unsettling. I wanted to feel less swashbucklerly and more violent, he added, because through that we understand a bit about character. Smith couldn't say whether Damien will survive into next season. The show lasts. Once his promotional obligations for this one are complete, he hopes to take some time off. Take each day as it comes. Try and water my roses, he said, which he seemed to mean literally. That's an escape from the bad men he plays. But the bad men are a kind of escape too, a release from everyday work of consistency and kindness, and a turn toward risk toward the precipice. It's such a gift, he said. What a great job that you get to go on, put a wig on, swing your sword, and call it expletive work. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the June 21st, 2026 issue of the New York Times Arts and Leisure section. We read from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section every Sunday at 3 p.m. Your reader has been Harriet Gromer Hicks. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the re-airing of this morning's Buffalo News. Following that at 6 p.m. is the Buffalo News Viewpoints. Stay tuned for this reading and more throughout the day. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability,